Good evening, everyone. This is Stephen here for your weekly delight and delectation. We have a couple of lists of high quality vinyl for you to peruse and think through before the price list goes out this Wednesday at 9 p.m. and the date will be the 9th of July, Sydney time. If you would like to be on the price list, email, drop me a note, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. This list tonight is dominated by roots reggae, with a couple of all-time classics right up front. So let's dig in, especially for those of you who love your Trojan and your deep roots reggae from the 70s and into the early 80s. You are in for a treat, I can promise you that. But there's only one place to start, and I had a little list, so let me just go and make sure that I don't forget anything. So we are going to start, that's right, we're going to start here. This is Speak of the Devil by Ozzy Osbourne. I'm wearing my Christmas in July Sleigh Bells t-shirt in honor of the great man, the Prince of Darkness, who had his last ever live concert yesterday. So for those of you who know this album, you will know that this was the only sanctioned non-bootleg live album from Ozzy's solo heyday that focused exclusively on Black Sabbath songs. So that makes me so happy. This is the US first press. It's a gatefold with this magnificent inner. Look at that. Incredible. Let's have a little check through the some of the tracks. So side 1 features Snowblind and Black Sabbath. Side 2 features War Pigs and The Wizard, and Fairies Wear Boots. Side 3, NIB, Sweet Leaf, Never Say Die. That's my personal favourite side. And side 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Iron Man, Children of the Grave, and Paranoid. Recorded live at the Ritz, New York in September 1982. There you have it. Speak of the Devil, the US first press from Ozzy Osbourne. The vinyl is fantastic on Jet Records. Why is Ozzy so revered? I mean, it's bizarre. This is a guy, biting the heads off animals and, generally living down to the reputation of rock star excess, hoovering up cocaine to the point where there's almost an entire album dedicated to the subject. And the reason that second song on side 1 is called Snowblind will be glaringly obvious to those of you who followed Sabbath in the 70s. But this is a guy who battled his addiction in public, whose humour and absolute lack of hubris just shone through, regardless of what he was doing. And he became almost like a UK national treasure, which is just amazing. This concert that happened yesterday, whilst it was, let's say, slow-paced and a guest-laden affair, it was also incredibly heartfelt. And I've listened to some of the snippets on YouTube, and Ozzy was in good voice. And I think he was operating more in gratitude than growl. I think you could see the delight on his face. Anyway, for those of you who like a bit of Sabbath and Ozzy, this live record is a cracker. And it's funny because it's whilst Sabbath invented many kind of genres, and you could start listing them out, you know, doom metal, stoner rock, etc. This record's interesting because of the guitarist Brad Gillis, who at times really kind of dives into speed metal, and those guitar solos are crazy at times. Very different to Iommi and Randy Rhoads, etc. So it's pretty gritty. It's pretty fast. It's hard edged. Anyway, I put it out there for some of you to love. I'm sure there's someone who will lap that up. Pretty hard to find the US first press in Australia, and I think it's the best. I think it's got to be right up there in terms of the best sounding copies, and that is a beautiful copy. All right, let's go here. I had this record last year. This is the sealed 3LP re-release of Ragged Glory by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. This was in the box set that I treated myself Christmas before last, and I have absolutely played this record to death. I knew that they would split the box up at some point. They still suckered me in. I still bought it. I think part of the reason that this record is so revered and is named so appropriately Ragged Glory was that the 80s for Neil Young was pretty wobbly. I mean, we're talking a few kind of acoustic folky affairs, and then lots of, I guess, how would you describe it? Feedback drenched chaos, I think is the best way. He kind of slid out of that with Freedom, and a little known band at the time called Pearl Jam kind of leapt in there and kind of decided Freedom was a great record. I think it's a really good record. I don't think it's a great record. I'm happy to have that debate. And you know, even Nirvana back then, I think they loved it. But then he teamed up with Crazy Horse, and they did Ragged Glory. This picture of them in a room, you know, probably on his farm somewhere, probably in a barn, turned up to 11, cranking out tunes like Country Home, White Line, Effin' Up, over and over. My personal favourite is Love to Burn, which I think is an absolute crazy record. When you've got, you know, Frank San Pedro and the dudes behind him in Crazy Horse, Neil Young just goes into another stratosphere. It's a touchstone record. I think that, you know, interestingly, I had an OG copy of this, and it was on a single vinyl record, and it's way too long for that, and it absolutely sounded SH1T. I was so delighted when this rolled in, and they've obviously tacked a few extra tracks on the end. Boxcar, Born to Run, just to round it out. Plays 3 slabs of stunning audiophile vinyl. I absolutely love it. You've got to play it, maximum volume. It's fantastic. All right. I'm going to only briefly show you this because you know what this is. For those of you who watched my video that I did last year on the greatest pressings of Dark Side of the Moon, you will recognize this. This is the revered, at least by me, 3rd press of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. It comes in a really nice condition sleeve with Obi and the 2 posters. Now, it doesn't have the magazine. The vinyl is pristine. I've played it. It sounds magnificent. If you want to know more as to why this record is my personal favorite Dark Side version, then I will include the link to my video in this week's email, and yeah, watch it and see. I spent last year gathering up pressings. I ended up with 23. Was it 21? Ooh. And I stack ranked them, and that came in number 1. Now we're going to flip gears and we're going to talk roots reggae. Now I bought a box of reggae from an auction house in the UK. It arrived probably 2-3 weeks ago, and I was very fortunate because some of the records were duplicates, some of them they had multiple copies, some of them I'd literally never heard of before. But what I've been able to do here is select 8 or 9 from that box and from a few other places to put together an interesting overview of that genre, roots reggae, which is my personal favourite genre. What you're talking about here is reggae that isn't necessarily all summertime on the beach. It veers into political commentary, into Rastafarianism, into what it means to be a good human being, into what it means to be free if you're from Jamaica or from the islands. And it's also just the most gloriously upbeat and beautiful tone because of that jinking, slinking backbeat and bass kind of gallop. And it just works. And it's particularly attractive to listen to on vinyl because it's so warm and inviting and analog. And so all of these records kind of sit in this subgenre that is my favorite. And I guess it's I suppose it's the equivalent of spiritual jazz. It's got that it's more about the self and the id than it is necessarily about sunshine and having a good time. Although don't think that these things are miserable, because they're not. For example, I've got here probably the 2 greatest records dedicated to Mary Jane, to marijuana. This is the UK first press of Bob Marley's Kaya, which is a nickname for marijuana, and this one, the UK first press gatefold of Peter Tosh's Legalize It. I'm going to start with this one because this, I think, is one of my favourite roots reggae records. So this picture was taken in a marijuana field near Pete Tosh's home in on the island. Not sure which island it is. You can see the back sleeve. There's this very leafy inner, and the lyrics are really surprisingly intricate and tender. And this is the UK inner that came with this record as well. Now, why do I love it so much? Well, he was and remained for his entire life a pretty fiery and militant guy. I mean, he was a founder of the Wailers. He struck out mid-70s on his own, and his mission was to confront injustice as he saw it, or as he described it, to call Babylon to account. He was from Westmoreland Parish in Jamaica, and he was never comfortable with Marley's overly spiritual stance. He was more political. He wanted action, and he was more acrimonious. But this is not how the music sounds. This record is it has lots of political undertones, obviously, but he is advocating the legalization of marijuana, but he is doing it and invoking people and names that you will hear if you've listened to this type of music, like Marcus Garvey, etc. It's got incredible protest songs like Equal Rights, which is great, or Ketchy Shubi, which is like a traditional kind of lolloping beat, but it's just wonderful. Or Brand New Second Hand. I think it's really bold. It was banned in Jamaica initially, and in some states in the US for obvious reasons, but I think it's an absolute political reggae cornerstone, and you will never find better than the UK first press. It's wonderful. So we got that, and then Kea. Let me just flip up to this. So this is more obviously very different in style to Legalize It. It's not as hard sounding. It's also slower and more melodic and more inviting, and it's really warm and analog. It includes the absolutely gorgeous "Is This Love," which has become, I think, one of his greatest songs. Pete Tosh would probably have felt that this record is too soft, but it's a real slow burn, and it might not have kind of shaken the world politically like Legalize It did, but in terms of sonic quality and mood, it's cut from the same cloth, and it is just as good. And it covers some of the same ground, just in a very different sounding way, which is the beauty of roots reggae, because it isn't necessarily always that harder edge like Burning Spear, Marcus Garvey. You can have a record like Kaya, which is wonderful, produced by Chris Blackwell. He did a great job back in the day of these types of records, and it charted really high in the UK. I think it was like top 5. I think it's a great record. Now let's go deeper. What about this? One of the great things about roots reggae are the compilations. The compilations, particularly on this label, the Trojan label. Now, this compilation, I remind myself, is from 1969, and what you've got here are amazing tracks leading into that roots reggae sound that emerged from the Wailers and the Maytals. And so you've got Red Red Wine, famous song, but this is the original version by Tony Tribe. You've got Games People Play by the Israelites. You've got Dandy, you've got Desmond Riley, the Rudies. And so what you got with this record is a mono snapshot of what roots reggae would become, and it's got this beautiful label, the Down Down label. I think that it's, and look at this sleeve too. Look at that. Really beautiful thing. This box from the UK had, I don't know, 15, 20 compilations in it, and they're all magnificent. So this is the Trojan Records Music House, 12 Neasden Lane, London, NW10, Northwest London. Absolute bedrock. And of course, West London, you've got the Notting Hill Festival, etc., with this type of roots, and dub music is still celebrated to this day. Wonderful mono compilation of tracks that not many of you will have, that will absolutely turn your head. I'm gonna have to speed up here because I could talk about these all day. They're so good. Sugar Minot. This is Japanese now. This is Sufferer's Choice, the Japanese first press on the CBS Sony label. Now, what's wonderful about Japanese presses of roots reggae is that they accentuate the musicality. Jamaican first presses are crackly, thuddy, murky. That gives them a feel which I like, but every so often I put on Japanese version or Japanese roots reggae record, and all of a sudden it's like the clouds lift. And Sufferer's Choice is like that. Sugar Minot, first name was Lincoln, was a really versatile and influential artist. He was also from Kingston, and the style of this type of artist is what was called sing-jay. So there's a talking and a singing, but he's got a really cool voice, and this is a really stripped down record. One of his many records. He made lots and lots of music, but the struggle and grind of Jamaican life was what he cared about. His voice is gentle but very urgent, really warm bass lines, The guitar lines on this record are top class. Come On Sister, Wrongdoers, and the title track I think is by far the best. It's really earthy and analog. It was recorded, I think it was probably recorded at Studio One. It's just a really fine record, and it's on King Records, and they cared more about the fidelity, and so that really works in Japanese backing. So I thought I'd put that on the list. Here's another of my favorites. This is Gregory Isaacs, the self-styled cool ruler, and this is also UK first press. This is called The Lonely Lover. This is from 1979 or 1980. Very sultry kind of delivery. Pretty tragic kind of personal life, Gregory Isaacs. You dig into that and you'll get a sense of why this guy was what he was. But again, he was Kingston ghetto kid and became a pioneer of what was called lovers roots, and so he was, a ladies' man. He's sensual, mid-tempo. Think of Gregory Isaacs as like the Marvin Gaye of the roots reggae scene. It's really warm and rounded, really suits that deeper UK press. I love it, and it's it's a white label promo, so it's a wonderful thing. If you don't know Gregory Isaacs, it's a really nice place to start. I've got some more unusual ones to come. Now, the roots space is typically vocal driven, but there were a few people who melded kind of roots reggae and jazz, and Ozzy Scott was one of those. And this is, what a sleeve, what a song this is. This is his album My Way, and yes, he covers My Way, and it is worth hearing. This feeling, you are everything, pleading, you will never know, produced and arranged by Bunny Lee. And one of the underlying kind of themes of all of these records is Sly and Dunbar on drums and bass. So, and there they are here, as you might expect. So saxophone, Ozzy Scott; organ, Winston Wright; piano, Keith Sterling; lead guitar, Chinner Smith; and rhythm. It gives you a sense of what this is. It is not roots reggae as you might know it, but it is a crate digger's delight. And honestly, it is, if you love genre mashups, so if you can imagine, kind of lounge jazz and roots reggae and soul mashed together, this is the record that you put on in a room and 5 people will go, what is that? It's one of those, and that appeals to me. It's not by far the least famous of anything on this list, but it's actually one of the ones I like the best. I also have Chill Out, Black Uhuru. This is also the UK first press, I believe, or maybe it's the Aussie first press. I'm gonna have to check it out. But Black Uhuru from the Warehouse District of Kingston were dark horse champions of kind of, I guess they came after Marley, maybe the post Marley roots scene. They are one of the key bands that pushed roots reggae into dub, and so that's why they're so revered. Dense, moody, lots of reverb, very deep bass, male and female voices. I'm a huge fan of Black Uhuru. Chill Out is from 1982. It's a fantastic record. I mentioned the Maytals a little bit earlier. This is from the Roots, Maytals. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular label, Music on Vinyl. This is interesting. Music on Vinyl, they never ever claim to have had access to original analog tapes, and it's almost impossible in this case that they would have had access to Frederick Toots Hibbert's tapes, but they do such a good job. I have one of my favorite blues albums, if not my favorite blues album, The Biggest Thing Since Colossus by Otis Spann and Fleetwood Mac. I had an original press, and then I got the music on vinyl, and the music on vinyl smashed it. And it is the case here. These Trojan records on music on vinyl are really good. I cannot say that they're audiophile because that's not what they're about. But if you just kind of have your criteria, is do they sound great? Yeah. The polyline sleeves, really nicely produced, not sloppy photocopied and then badly rendered. They just do a really good job. And this record is just joyous, unrelenting rhythm and roots soul. Maybe not as politically charged as kind of later roots reggae albums, but I absolutely love it. PP Cluck Cluck and some of the others are just Pomp and Pride. I love it. It's really cool, and you just cannot get clean first presses of this, and so it is a delight that Music and Vinyl will find a way to create these great records. I had a UK compilation earlier. Now I want to show you what the Japanese did, and the Japanese loved Trojan, and they actually printed on the classic blue Trojan label. I've got a couple of copies of this. I didn't realize it until I started researching this particular video, and so I'm very pleased to be able to offer one. This is a classic compilation. Look at that sleeve, screams Jamaica. Bob and Marsha, the Pioneers, Ken Booth, Desmond Decker, the Heptones, more about the Heptones in a bit. The Maytals do the reggae, Dandy Livingston. Just a wonderful thing, and it sounds so good, and so that's why it made the list. And I'm going to rush to the last record here, which is another Japanese record. I had to have a Heptones record on the list because one of the delights of roots reggae were what were called 3-part or trios, and you would have these incredible harmonies. So in this case, the Heptones, Leroy Sibbles, Barry Llewellyn, and Earl Morgan are where roots reggae crosses into soul and gospel, and it is such a full, beautiful sound. They were one of Studio One's mainstays, really into kind of conscious roots and better life for island people. It is really romantic, really beautiful and smooth and melodic, just like everything the Heptones ever did. And I think as these records kind of moved into the 80s, it kind of, I guess, documents reggae's shifting sands. And the Heptones become more sonically inventive in many ways than the roots records that went before. Love them to bits. So there you have a little bit of a deep dive on roots reggae with a selection of 10 records and some fantastic stuff up the top from Neil Young, Pink Floyd, and the absolutely legendary, irrefutable Ozzy Osbourne. If you like this record or this video, please drop me a line or a comment or, whatever you think you might be able to do for me. If you would like to be on the price list for this list, which again will go out this Wednesday, the 9th of July at 9 p.m. Sydney time, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Thank you.